My friends, there comes a time in every person's life when the fire begins to flicker, when the mountain seems too steep, and when the path forward is blurred by doubt, fatigue, or failure. It is in these very moments when everything in you screams to stop that you must force yourself to keep going. You see, success does not yield itself to the faint of heart. It bends only to those who persist when it no longer makes sense to do so. It rewards those who press forward when their energy is gone, when the applause has faded, and when no one is watching. The greatest achievements the world has ever known were born not in ease, but in resistance. Every victory was first forged in a mind that refused to quit. That is where greatness begins, in the silence of a tired soul who whispers just one more step. You may face setbacks, you will experience rejection. But let me tell you, defeat is never permanent unless you accept it as final. Every obstacle you encounter is not there to stop you, it is there to strengthen you. Life tests all those who dare to dream. It must know whether you are worthy of what you seek, and here is the truth that most overlook. Discipline is stronger than motivation. Motivation is fleeting a spark, but discipline, that is the engine. And when motivation fails, as it surely will, you must command yourself to continue. Force yourself to rise earlier. Force yourself to practice longer. Force yourself to study when others sleep, to build when others destroy, to believe when others doubt. For it is in that forcing, that conscious act of pushing beyond comfort, that you separate yourself from the masses. Your mind, when directed with purpose and fed with determination, becomes the most powerful force on earth. What the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve, but only if you act, only if you endure, only if you refuse to stop. So when the road gets hard, and it will, don't wait for the right moment or the right feeling. Don't hope for inspiration. Instead, dig deep, call on that quiet inner strength, and force yourself to keep going. Because the man or woman who keeps going, regardless of pain, fear, or failure, that is the one who wins. Thank you. Success requires persistence beyond comfort. This is a truth that lies at the foundation of every achievement, every dream realized, and every life transformed. Comfort is the enemy of growth. It is seductive, warm, and easy, but it is also dangerous. It convinces you that good enough is acceptable, that rest is deserved before the race is finished, and that slowing down is harmless. But in the realm of success, those who yield to comfort find themselves stagnating while the persistent continue climbing. Every individual who has ever reached a goal worth attaining has battled against the powerful pull of comfort. The mind will always seek the path of least resistance. It will suggest that you delay action, that you rest a little longer, that you stop when progress becomes painful. And if you listen to that voice, if you surrender to that internal softness, then you will be exactly where you are, perhaps safe, perhaps content, but never truly fulfilled. Progress lies in discomfort. Every inch you advance beyond what is easy. Every moment you force yourself to move when your body and mind would rather pause is a moment of growth. You are not built by the days when everything goes right. You are built by the days you persist when everything feels wrong. When you wake up tired, when the results don't show, when your efforts seem pointless and yet you keep going. That is when character is forged, and that is when success begins to take root. You cannot expect greatness and live in ease. The two are not compatible. Greatness demands sweat, sacrifice, and sometimes suffering. It demands that you do what others won't stay up later. Try again after failure. Keep pushing with no guarantee of reward. It demands that you resist the seductive voice that says, "You've done enough," because in the pursuit of real success, there is always more to give. There is always one more effort, one more try, one more push that could make the difference. True persistence is not about being naturally strong or endlessly motivated. It is about making a decision, a firm, unyielding decision, that you will continue no matter what. It is the decision to act even when you don't feel like it. To show up when you're discouraged. To continue building when no one is clapping for you, when no one believes in you, and when even you begin to doubt yourself. That kind of persistence cannot be taught in a classroom or read in a book. It is built in the trenches of repeated effort. It is carved out of the countless hours you spend chasing a goal that remains just out of reach. It is earned in the lonely moments when you choose to keep working while others sleep, relax, or retreat. And that persistence, the kind that defies comfort and convenience, is what separates the successful from the spectators. Those who rise to the top are not always the smartest, the most talented, or the most connected, but they are almost always the most persistent. They are the ones who kept showing up, who forced themselves to keep moving forward, who endured setbacks without surrender. They walked through frustration, rejection, and delay without turning back. And in doing so, they developed a rare strength, the strength to continue regardless of conditions. If you are waiting for the perfect moment to push forward, it will never come. If you are waiting for motivation to strike like lightning, you will be waiting forever. The only way to win is to act, especially when you don't feel like it. That's what persistence beyond comfort really means, acting despite the absence of ease, choosing the hard path because the reward is worth it, taking the next step not because you're ready, but because you've made a commitment to yourself that quitting is no longer an option. Every challenge you face is an invitation to grow stronger. Every discomfort you feel is a signal that you are pushing against your current limits. And that is exactly where you must be, because real growth, the kind that transforms your life, begins only after comfort ends. Defeat is only permanent if accepted. This statement holds more power than it may seem at first glance. In the course of striving toward any meaningful goal, setbacks are inevitable. You will stumble. You will experience failure. You will fall short of your expectations. But none of that matters unless you decide to make those setbacks your final destination. Defeat itself is not the enemy. It is how you respond to it that determines the outcome of your story. Most people misunderstand the nature of failure. They think it is an end. They treat it as proof that they are unworthy, unprepared, or incapable. But failure is none of those things. Failure is information. It is feedback. It is a sign that something must change, your strategy, your mindset, your preparation, but it is never a verdict on your potential. It is only permanent if you stop trying. There are people who met defeat hundreds of times before achieving success. They were told no, rejected, ignored, mocked, and discouraged, but they did not accept those defeats as final. They kept moving, they kept learning, they kept adapting. They treated every defeat as a temporary condition, not a life sentence. That mindset is what made all the difference, because the only real failure occurs when you give up and never try again. You have the power to redefine defeat. You can look it in the face and say, "You are not the end of me." You can use it as fuel instead of fear. But to do that, you must separate what happens to you from how you interpret it. A closed door is not a dead end, it may be a redirection. A failed attempt is not the end of your abilities, it is a lesson in how to sharpen them. Most importantly, the fact that something didn't work out once, or even 100 times, does not mean it never will. The ones who rise in this world are those who refuse to stay down. They feel disappointment like anyone else. They experience frustration, but they don't let those feelings decide their fate. They acknowledge the defeat, then use it. They gather what they've learned, recalibrate, and strike again. They understand that temporary defeat is a necessary companion on the road to lasting success. The difference between those who succeed and those who don't is not always intelligence or opportunity. It is resilience. The ability to recover, the willingness to return to the fight, the inner voice that whispers, "Not yet," instead of "It's over." That is the true separator, because many people give up just moments before they would have broken through. They accept defeat too soon, never realizing that one more effort, one more attempt, one more hour of perseverance could have made all the difference. When you accept defeat as permanent, you give away your power. You allow your current circumstances to dictate your future. You trade in your potential for the comfort of avoidance, but when you refuse to accept it, when you stand up one more time after falling, you reclaim control. You tell the world and yourself that you are not finished yet, that your story is still being written. Defeat can teach you more than victory ever will. It strips away illusion. It shows you what doesn't work, which is often just as valuable as knowing what does. It humbles you, strengthens you, and forces you to confront your weaknesses, but only if you choose to face it instead of fleeing from it. Only if you meet it with courage instead of surrender. In every setback, there is a seed of something greater. But that seed can only be nurtured through continued effort. If you bury it under self, pity, doubt, or fear, it will never grow. But if you dig into the defeat, examine it, and decide to press on, it becomes the very soil in which your eventual success will flourish. The pain of defeat is temporary. The regret of surrender can last a lifetime. No one escapes failure. No one walks a smooth path all the way to the top. What matters is whether you continue walking after the ground gives way. What matters is whether you choose to climb again after falling. Defeat is a detour, not a dead end. It is an experience, not an identity. You are only defeated when you accept that title and stop reaching for what you want. Discipline outweighs motivation. This is a principle that separates temporary effort from lasting achievement. Motivation is a powerful force, but it is unreliable. It comes and goes with your mood, your energy levels, your environment, and your emotions. One day, you feel inspired and you take action. The next day, that inspiration vanishes and the same task feels impossible. This inconsistency is the reason so many dreams remain unfulfilled. People wait for motivation, and when it doesn't come, they do nothing. They believe that action must be preceded by feeling ready, but those who achieve great things understand that waiting to feel ready is a trap. Discipline does not care how you feel. It is not swayed by emotion or external conditions. It is the decision to do what needs to be done, even when you don't want to. It is a commitment that exists outside of your feelings. Discipline shows up when motivation fails. It keeps you moving when your excitement fades. It is the voice that says, get up and do the work, while motivation says, stay where it's comfortable. The illusion that motivation is necessary for action is one of the greatest obstacles to success. People believe that highly successful individuals are constantly motivated, constantly energized, and constantly inspired. In reality, many of them have simply mastered the art of discipline. They have trained themselves to act independently of how they feel. They do the work regardless. That's why they continue to grow while others plateau. They follow a schedule, not a feeling. They rely on habits, not impulses. Discipline is what builds consistency, and consistency is what leads to results. A person who works hard only when they feel motivated will never match the results of someone who works hard every single day. Consistency is not exciting, and it is rarely easy, but it is incredibly effective. The compounding effect of repeated effort, even small, is how excellence is achieved. Each disciplined action builds on the last, forming a chain of progress that becomes impossible to ignore. Discipline also sharpens your character. It teaches you that success is earned, not given. It humbles you. It forces you to confront resistance and move through it. It builds mental toughness because it requires you to override your desire for comfort and replace it with commitment. When you act out of discipline, you are strengthening your will. You are developing the ability to govern your own behavior, and that ability translates into every area of life. The most powerful advantage of discipline is that it puts control back into your hands. Motivation is passive, it must be felt. Discipline is active, it must be chosen. When you rely on motivation, you are at the mercy of your internal state. When you rely on discipline, you take full responsibility for your actions. You no longer ask, do I feel like doing this? You simply say, it must be done, and you do it, That mindset removes excuses. It removes hesitation. It gives you clarity and power. Success is not built on the days when everything feels perfect. It is built on the days when you don't feel like showing up, but you do anyway. When you're tired, but you push forward. When you're discouraged, but you still take that next step. These moments, small as they may seem, are what shape your destiny. Discipline is the force behind every great accomplishment because it sustains momentum long after the initial motivation has burned out. Motivation may get you started, but only discipline will keep you going. It is the quiet engine behind daily effort, the unseen force behind every repetition, every practice, every late night and early morning. It is not flashy, but it is dependable. It does not make you feel good in the moment, but it brings fulfillment over time. It gives you something motivation cannot: control over your life. You become the kind of person who does what needs to be done regardless of the situation, and that kind of person is unstoppable. Because they are not waiting for the wind to push them forward. They are walking forward no matter the weather. They are not dependent on inspiration. They are driven by intention, and they do not break under pressure. They rise because they have trained themselves to rise. Discipline is the structure on which success is built. Without it, effort is random and results are fleeting. With it, everything becomes possible. Obstacles are tests of worthiness. Every challenge that stands in your way is not there to block you, but to ask you a question: how badly do you want it? Success is never handed over freely. It is earned, and the price is paid in effort, in resilience, in sacrifice, and in persistence. Obstacles are the way the world measures whether you are serious, whether you are committed, and whether you possess the strength to carry the rewards you seek. Too many people see obstacles as a sign that they should stop. They encounter difficulty, and they assume it means they are on the wrong path, but that assumption is false. In truth, the presence of obstacles often confirms that you are heading in the right direction. Anything worth having will stretch you. It will demand growth. It will challenge your current limits and force you to become more than you are today. Obstacles are not roadblocks, they are gateways. You don't go around them. You go through them, and in doing so, you are changed. When you meet resistance, it is an opportunity to prove your readiness, not just to others, but to yourself. Every setback, every failure, every moment of uncertainty is a question: are you still willing to continue? Will you adapt? Will you fight through the discomfort? Or will you retreat and settle for less? The answers you give in those moments define your future, not your talent, not your intentions, your response to resistance. Obstacles have a unique way of revealing character. They strip away the surface-level enthusiasm that fades when things get hard. They reveal whether your goals are rooted in deep purpose or shallow interest. Anyone can say they want success. Anyone can dream of achievement, but only those who press on in the face of difficulty are truly worthy of the prize. That is why the journey is hard, because it is meant to filter out those who are not yet ready. There is something to be gained in every struggle. Whether it is patience, humility, strength, or wisdom, obstacles shape you in ways that easy victories never could. They are the pressure that forges discipline. They are the adversity that teaches endurance. They are the discomfort that forces focus. Without them, there would be no progress, no transformation, no true achievement. Obstacles do not exist to break you. They exist to build you. You cannot grow by avoiding the hard things. Growth is a byproduct of friction. When you face a problem that demands more than you've ever given, you are given a chance to rise. You must dig deeper, think sharper, work smarter. You must stretch your patience, expand your capacity, and hold your vision firm even when everything around you shakes. These are the very moments that separate those who wish from those who win. The world will not simply give you what you want. It will test you, it will push back, it will make you question everything, but those tests are not punishment. They are preparation. They make sure that when you arrive at your destination, you are strong enough to stay there. They develop the skills, the mindset, and the strength that success requires. Without the tests, you would not be prepared for the responsibility that comes with your goals. It is easy to desire a better life, a stronger body, a thriving business, a meaningful legacy. But desires alone mean nothing. Action in the face of obstacles is what brings desire to life. The ability to keep moving when the path is unclear, when support is lacking, when failure has bruised your ego, that ability is the real currency of achievement. When obstacles appear, the average person looks for an exit. The uncommon individual looks for a way through. That difference in mindset changes everything. It transforms resistance into opportunity. It sees problems as puzzles to solve, not reasons to quit. It sees the obstacle as a teacher, not a threat. The uncommon individual understands that the bigger the challenge, the greater the transformation required to overcome it, and the more valuable the reward. You are not judged by whether you face obstacles. Everyone does. You are judged by how you respond to them. Will you rise to meet them or shrink beneath them? Will you see them as the end or as the beginning of your evolution? The choice is always yours. Every obstacle is a mirror. It shows you where you are weak, and it invites you to become strong. It demands your best, and it gives you the opportunity to become better than you've ever been. The mind is the greatest tool when directed with purpose. Everything that has ever been created, achieved, or overcome began first as a thought. The mind holds the power to build empires or destroy potential. It can lift you to the highest levels of achievement or chain you to a life of mediocrity. The difference lies in how it is used. An undisciplined mind will drift, wander, and eventually become a slave to fear, doubt, and distraction. A mind under control, directed with clear intent, becomes a force of nature. Thoughts are not idle. They shape belief, and belief drives behavior. What you allow to dominate your thinking will inevitably influence your actions. If your mind is filled with doubt, you will hesitate. If it is filled with excuses, you will procrastinate. If it is filled with negativity, you will sabotage your own progress. But if it is filled with purpose, strong, clear, unwavering purpose, then your thoughts become fuel. Your beliefs become solid ground. Your actions become aligned and powerful. The mind responds to what you give it. Feed it weakness, and it will shrink. Feed it purpose, and it will expand. Purpose gives the mind direction. Without it, the mind becomes reactive instead of proactive. It reacts to circumstances, moods, and the opinions of others. It becomes a battlefield of conflicting desires and emotions. But with purpose, the mind becomes a compass. It filters out distractions. It chooses priorities. It stays focused in the face of noise and pressure. The challenge is not in having a powerful mind. Everyone is born with that capacity. The challenge is in learning to control it, to master it, to discipline it. That means becoming aware of your inner dialogue, listening to what you tell yourself when things go wrong, paying attention to the stories you repeat, the limits you accept, and the language you use. The mind takes direction from these subtle cues. If you tell yourself you're not good enough, it will find evidence to prove it. If you tell yourself you will succeed, it will start looking for ways to make it happen. Repetition reinforces reality. Every time you choose a thought, you strengthen its influence. A single negative thought may be harmless, but repeated often enough, it becomes a belief, and beliefs, once rooted, determine the entire course of your life. That's why it is not enough to occasionally think positively. You must discipline your mind daily. You must guard it like a fortress. You must program it with intention and persistence. Visualization is one of the most powerful ways to direct the mind. When you see your goal clearly, when you imagine yourself already achieving it, the mind begins to accept that image as truth. It starts creating paths, finding solutions, and triggering behavior to match that vision. You don't just work harder, you work smarter with clarity and confidence. That's the power of directing the mind. It doesn't just change what you do, it changes who you become. But the mind doesn't automatically align with your goals. It has to be trained, and like any powerful tool, if misused, it can be dangerous. The same mind that can create confidence can also create fear. The same mind that can find a way forward can also invent excuses to stay still. That is why self-awareness and mental discipline are so important. Without them, the mind will be shaped by external forces, by fear, by failure, by what others say is possible. You must become the master of your thoughts. That means choosing them deliberately, directing them toward what serves your purpose, letting go of the ones that do not. This is not something that happens once. It is a daily discipline. It is an ongoing act of mental leadership. Just as the body is shaped by how you move it, the mind is shaped by how you think. If you want a strong, resilient, focused mind, you must exercise it. You must stretch it, challenge it, and feed it with purpose. When the mind is aligned with purpose, it becomes unstoppable. Doubt fades, distraction weakens, direction sharpens. You begin to act not out of emotion or reaction, but out of clarity. You don't wait to feel ready. You know where you're going. And that inner certainty becomes your advantage. In a world full of noise and uncertainty, a mind rooted in purpose cuts through the fog. It stays the course. It holds the vision. It becomes the silent engine driving everything forward. Success bends to those who refuse to quit. It does not always come to the most talented, the most educated, or the most connected. It yields most often to those who simply will not stop, those who show up again and again, who fight through discouragement, who outlast failure and fatigue. Success respects persistence. It bows to resilience. It follows those who keep going, long after the excitement has faded and the struggle has become real. The journey is not about brilliance. It's about endurance. There are countless people with dreams, ambitions, and goals. They start strong, full of energy and hope, but then come the delays, the setbacks, the rejections, the silence, the long nights of doubt, and the lonely days when nothing seems to move. That is where most turn back. That is where most settle for less. But the few who keep pushing, who grit their teeth and take one more step even when the path seems to vanish, those are the ones success eventually meets. There is a force in consistency that cannot be matched. A person who refuses to quit is a person who cannot be beaten. They may fall, but they rise. They may lose, but they return. They may hurt, but they press on. Every challenge becomes a test of commitment, and they pass it not with ease, but with unshakable will. Success sees that kind of spirit and cannot deny it forever, because while others stop and start, the persistent keep building brick by brick, inch by inch. The world may not notice the first time you try. It may ignore you the second and third and 10th, but it watches what you do when no one claps, when no one sees. Do you continue? Do you keep creating, learning, grinding when it seems pointless? That's the real test, because if you can persist without recognition, without reward, and without reassurance, you've already become something powerful. You've developed the internal fire that no outside force can extinguish. There's a reason so many people fall short of their goals. It's not because they weren't capable. It's because they stopped. Somewhere along the way, they let the weight of delay convince them they were not meant for more. They mistook slow progress for no progress. They didn't realize that sometimes growth is invisible, that sometimes momentum builds beneath the surface, unseen until one day it breaks through. But only those who keep going get to see that breakthrough. Refusing to quit does not mean you never feel doubt. It does not mean you never get tired. It means you choose to rise anyway. You make the decision day after day to continue. You refuse to let temporary emotion dictate permanent direction. You know that one more day of effort, one more attempt, one more try could change everything. And even if it doesn't, you know that giving up guarantees failure, while continuing always keeps the possibility of success alive. There's a quiet strength in persistence. It doesn't scream. It doesn't demand attention. It simply does the work. It stays the course. It survives storms and silence and still moves forward. That kind of strength builds momentum. It earns respect. It changes outcomes. It proves over time that grit often beats glamour and determination outpaces raw talent. When you look at those who have built lasting success, you'll often find a long trail of setbacks behind them. You'll see years of being overlooked, underestimated, misunderstood, but they didn't let those moments define them, they let them shape them. They used every closed door as fuel, every delay as training, every rejection as redirection. They became relentless, not because they never failed, but because they decided that failure was not final. Quitting is always available, it's always easy, and it always whispers when you're tired, when you're disappointed, when you feel alone. But so does greatness. It whispers too. It calls to those willing to fight for it, to wait for it, to work for it long after the comfort has gone. Greatness lives on the far side of endurance. It reveals itself not to the most gifted, but to the most stubborn, the most committed, the most unshakably persistent. Persistence is not about speed, it's about direction. It's not about never falling. It's about never staying down. It's about walking through failure and using it as a stepping stone. It's about refusing to let the world wear down your belief. It's about continuing when no one would blame you for stopping. It's about making the decision every single day to move forward, no matter how small the step.